And welcome in. It's your friend Jug here at Buckeye Huddle Primetime. Appreciate you so much for joining us. Tonight, we go over 10 facts that I know about these Ohio State Buckeyes halfway through the season. As we are now halfway through the regular season, it kind of flew by. We got Wisconsin, then a bye week coming up. Poor Luke Fickell in Wisconsin. They just lost 37-0, and it looks like he's going to get another bludgeoning. He just looked like a broken man. Obviously, we've had a crazy weekend of college football. The two biggest stories the Indiana story, the biggest of my life, I think, in college football, like the biggest single turnaround we've ever seen. It wasn't possible most of my life. It wasn't possible to the transfer portal to do what he's done, but turning Indiana into a legit national power, which is what they are now. They're a legit national power. I didn't want to admit it for the longest time. I tried to fend it off because the Indiana fans were pretty cocky about it that I dealt with on the show. And it's true. It's true. They're the real deal. And I know a lot of Buckeye fans have been rooting them on, having a whole lot of fun with this story. We got to deal with these guys now. And they're legit competition. And it looks like Ohio State and Indiana, the odds-on favorites to meet in the Big Ten championship. So we'll see what happens this time around. The Buckeyes got them the first time last year. But this year's Indiana team is better. Of course, James Franklin gets fired, opening up a massive vacancy. And we will talk over at Juck on Bucks tomorrow about how that affects recruiting, potential targets for the Buckeyes. Chaz Coleman, of course, we'll talk about him. But today, I wanted to kind of not review, but just a couple of observations I have that, look, when I say fact, I say that loosely. These are my opinions, but I believe them to be fact. I believe them to be fact, and I'm going to try to sell you on some of them. But I'm going to start right here. I have made this case for a while now, but Ryan Day continues to assist me in making the case and giving me more ammo for this case, as does Kirby Smart. What's it got to do with Kirby Smart? Kirby Smart, widely seen as the best coach in college football, the number one coach in college football, running the premier program in college football down in Georgia. And of course, Kirby comes from the Nick Saban tree. He helped Nick do a lot of what he did. Mark Richt gets fired at Georgia for doing much like James Franklin did, coincidentally. James Franklin, Mark Richt, very similar guys who couldn't win the big one, had a powerhouse program that they couldn't figure out how to get it over the top. Richt, obviously, in a different era where you didn't need money to do it, or maybe you did. You get my point. But Kirby comes into Georgia where he played football, and he turns Georgia and takes it into that next tier, and he does so with an unbelievable job recruiting, but really an advantage that nobody else has. When we look at the top 5 talent producing states, Kirby uniquely situated in the state where he is the only top dog in Georgia. Well, things have changed, and that doesn't mean as much as it used to. And in this new era, things are a little bit different. Not so easy for Kirby, though he is still compiling top 3 classes. He's never not had a top 3 class in the 10 years that he's been there. Difficult to retain those guys in stat class after class. I don't think he's done a great job at it. But when we look at his team last year, which was, I don't want to say one of his worst teams. He's probably his first year was obviously worse than that, but it was definitely not a very scary team to play. This year, they go out, they bring in Deion Branch. They bring in Noah, what's his face, from Texas A&M. 2 primetime receivers. Noah, the big tall wide receiver, Zachariah Branch, obviously the speedy burner from USC. The Bucks were in on in recruiting out of Bishop Gorman, came close to getting him. And they pair these 2 guys with Colby Young, who they got the previous year in the transfer portal from Miami, got in some legal trouble, didn't play much last year. And this is going to fix their team as far as explosive plays. They had the most drops in the SEC in the country last year. And so far, not so good, as Noah Thomas has 4 catches on the year. The 3 of those wide receivers have combined for 3 touchdowns on the year. Gunnar Stockton, their new quarterback, who's been around the program forever, great leader, can run the ball, not a very dynamic passer. They can't push the ball down the field at all.
Why do you think the first half has just been so hard, especially with some of the slower starts for you guys?
I don't know. I wish I knew. I mean, I would tell you if I did. I asked the team that question afterwards. We got to get it solved.
What does it say, and what can it mean for this offense moving forward for a drive like that?
That's really who we are, though. Like, we don't have these explosive plays, and I've come to the conclusion, I want them. Yeah, we're going to scheme for them. We're going to put them together. We're going to keep doing it. We're going to try. We're going to throw the ball downfield. We're going to hit Noah. But that's who we are. We're a stay out of third and long. We're going to run the ball. We're going to hit quick passing game. We're going to use Gunner's legs. And we've had several of those, if you think about it, these long drives. The problem is we're having them on defense too, and it's hard. 'Cause I felt like the first half we spent the whole, I was 20-6, or I don't know what it was, but the time of possession was way out of whack. And I'm okay with that as your identity, but you need to play really good defense behind that kind of identity. And we've played okay defense. I mean, it's crazy how good we can play at times and how poorly we can play at times.
While Ryan Day has ascended and brought the Ohio State program up to the top of the sport, we're seeing Kirby's program in a decline. And Kirby talked about his program after the big win at Auburn, a big win where, man, they got outplayed by Auburn for a lot of the game till Auburn got a nasty call. And I think it was the right call, if I'm being honest. They got a call and it kind of changed the momentum. And that's on Auburn, right? They got to be mentally tougher than that. But Kirby ends up winning the game at Auburn and celebrates like he just beat this unbelievable team. And everybody says, wow, how gritty the SEC is. Kirby won the SEC last year with a not so great team. That's a testament to him, but it's also an indictment on the league. This year, Kirby just doesn't seem to have it. The program seems in decline. They've lost one game so far. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I really don't. I think Texas is going to go into Georgia and beat them. Texas obviously beat Oklahoma this week. They've got signs of life, but it just feels like it's a program in decline. And I think that Ryan Day has already taken over the mantle from Kirby Smart. And I think it's just going to continue to look like this with Georgia going backwards and Ohio State maintaining the best program in the country. When we look at the state of the program, when we see the reaction after Ohio State goes and beats a ranked Illinois team that I believe is going to make the playoffs, the reaction isn't like tons of joy. It's okay, on to the next. The running game sucked, blah, blah, blah. The state of the Ohio State program right now, maybe never better in my life. And when we look at the other periods that could vie for that title, 2002 and 2003, like a 2-year period, no, that's not beating where we're at right now. Having just won a national championship and being not just the favorite to win the national championship, but the odds have increased since last week. When we look at 2014 and 2015 walks in after a national championship, unbelievably talented roster, now more matured. They weren't locked in. And at this point in the year, the 2015 Buckeyes were nowhere near as good as these Buckeyes right now in 2025, in my opinion. Obviously different eras, but they just weren't playing like a team that everybody was scared of. This team, everybody's scared of, coming off of winning a national championship. And when we factor in the roster turnover right now, I think we are living in the best little snapshot of Ohio State football of my life. Ryan Day did that. And as we see Kirby in his program, the guy who's been sitting on the crown, taking a step back, Ryan Day continues to take steps forward. And I think at this point, Ryan Day, when we see these corny lists come out this offseason, which we always do, I participated in it year one in my show. And then I decided this is stupid. I'm not going to do it anymore. But they get a lot of clicks, no doubt. Ryan Day is going to be, he didn't get a single vote from any one of those ones I saw last year. He was number 2. He was number 3 on some. He deserved to be that number 2 for sure. But Ryan Day right now, the number 1 coach in all of college football. That's my case. You can let me know what you think. And let me know what you think about the 2-year stretch. I do want to note that Illinois game, Illinois left on their schedule. Now they've got 2 losses. The first loss to Indiana, and it was terrible. And it was so terrible that I think it skewed a lot of what Ohio State fans felt about this game last Saturday. As the Buckeyes win 34-16, they covered the spread, and they didn't even play their best game. In fact, those metrics that kind of show like who played the better game, it's upside down. Ohio State didn't play as good of a game according to those metrics. You know, the metrics, I'm not good with that kind of stuff, guys. I wish I could help. But the metrics say that Ohio State didn't play as good of a game as Illinois, which the fact that you were able to win like that pretty handily, and some people will say, well, you got 3 turnovers to their 0 turnovers. I would say they didn't get 3 turnovers. They created 3 turnovers. Some are lucky, some you go out and get. And each one of those 3 turnovers, Jermaine Matthews' sack where he caused the fumble, and Caden Curry was immediately on it. He was so fast down to the ground to get that ball. That is a caused turnover. The tipped ball interception by Jermaine to Peyton Pierce catching it, that is a caused turnover. And of course, Caden Curry grabbing and stripping the ball, that is a caused turnover. Let's hope it's a sign of things to come for the Bucs. But winning that game gives Illinois their second loss. Their first one, really poor fashion, and people thought that would eliminate them from any playoff conversation. Now they lose to the Buckeyes. We're now talking about two top 3 teams that they just lost to. They lost to Indiana and Ohio State, 2 of the top 3 teams in the country. I don't see that changing. What's left on their schedule as they sit here with 2 losses? They've got Washington next week, this Saturday, the biggest game of their season to date. After that game, they have one more road game. That's with Wisconsin. Then they have Rutgers, Purdue, and Northwestern. So Rutgers, Purdue, Northwestern, Wisconsin. That's their path to the playoffs if they can get past Washington. That's all they got to do. Beat Washington, handle their business, they're in. So that is a potential playoff team. I think a likely playoff team, so long as they just handle their business in Washington, which will be tough. Washington is 5-1. Going out there is not easy to go out there and play. But if they can snap out of coming off of a loss at Ohio State, I think they can win. We've seen this Washington team messing around now, playing with their food twice in a row. They were down 10 last week. The week before, they were down 20 against Maryland. They came back and won. I think Illinois can beat them. Even if they don't, it helps Washington in their potential bid for the playoffs, but they have a tougher road to go. So ultimately, I'll be rooting for Illinois in that game. And quite a story, man. Quite a story. But the Buckeyes went and handled their business in Illinois. And Ryan Day is, to me, unequivocally the number 1 coach in college football right now. I do also want to show you the updated odds for the national championship. Notice Georgia nowhere to be found. Ohio State plus 350. Those odds have only gotten better as the Buckeyes were at plus 420 last week. Alabama plus 650. They now move into the number 2 spot over Miami. They're at plus 750. And Indiana, your number 4 odds-on favorite to win a national championship. Amazing story. Texas Tech at 5th. That's crazy. But we're seeing some separation from the field by the Buckeyes as they were muddled together with some teams most of the year. Now you got 300 between them and Bama, and they're cooking, man. The Buckeyes are cooking. Fact number 2, we don't often grade a quarterback definitively halfway through the season, but we're halfway through the season, and this is the most obvious one of all my facts here. Julian Sayin was a hit. Now, Ryan Day didn't get him traditionally, right, out of the recruiting ranks. He got him as a transfer, technically. But he loses that recruitment to Alabama, and obviously he still had to get him in the transfer portal. That was a big one. He had a little help from Bill O'Brien, but he also had to make the decision to bring him in. And that decision to bring him in was a very difficult decision for him. He had Aaron Nolan committed in the class. He told Aaron Nolan he would be the only quarterback, and he decides to bring in Julian Sayin. And when we look at 2 of the 3 previous quarterbacks that he brought in with Devin Brown, Kyle McCord, Lincoln Keenholz, Devin Brown was a miss, flat out miss. Kyle McCord wasn't so much of a miss, but it was clear he brought in a guy that he couldn't work with, and they decided to part ways. So 2 of the 3, as Lincoln, there's no grade on Lincoln, 2 of those 3 are misses. Julian Sayin, an obvious hit. An obvious hit is Julian Sayin, 6 games through his first season starting, PFF's number 1 quarterback in the country, the most accurate quarterback in the country. The dude is calm, cool, collected, no matter what the situation. He is so smooth. He is so good. And Ryan Day has his quarterback for this year and next year, which means the entire Jeremiah Smith 3-year block. You win a national championship with Will Howard, and now you know you got your quarterback set. You're not going to waste the best wide receiver we're ever going to see in college football, and that is a huge plus. So fact number 2, Julian Sayin, a hit. A very obvious one, but we got to say it because, I mean, even though it is obvious, it's still amazing. It really is. It's amazing that we know halfway through the season that Julian Sand is a hit. The guy has played 4 P4 opponents in his life. 2 of them have been on the road in tough environments against a ranked team in Illinois that is potentially a playoff team in Washington, one of the toughest places to play, a 5-1 team now. In 2 of those 4 games he played with those 2 opponents, 2 at home, and just in that small sample size, 4 P4 games, we know already Julian Sand is a dude. He's a hit. He will be a top 10 quarterback this year and next year or his entire Ohio State career, should it go any further than that, which I don't think it will at this point. But Julian Sand, bingo. Number 3, we can now also definitively say not only is the 2025 defense better than the 2024 defense, in my opinion, it's a fact now that this defense is better. We've seen it halfway through the season. It is putting up legendary generational numbers. Matter of fact, let me pull up these numbers that Fox just tweeted out the other day on this graphic here. The job of the defense is to give up the fewest points possible. Ohio State, 6.8 points per game halfway through the season. That is the fewest average points per game given up since 1975 or before your boy was born. That's amazing, man. 6.8 points a game, 229 yards. That is the fewest since 2007. 3.9 yards per play, the fewest since 2019. And just 4 touchdowns, the fewest since 2007. Had they not given up that late touchdown against Illinois, no doubt that'd be way better. The point is, last year's defense did not put up numbers like this. Last year's defense did not strike the fear that this defense puts into offensive coordinators, to head coaches. We didn't hear head coaches talk like PJ Fleck talked about this defense last year. And that is an amazing compliment to not just Matt Patricia, who number 4 or 5, whatever number we're on, is the best DC in the country. Matt Patricia is the number 1 DC in the college ranks right now. He's it. He's the dude. He is revolutionizing what's being played in college football. You hear him rave about him all over the country. Ryan Day made that hire, and it looked like at the time to a lot of people like he was making a hire off the NFL trash heap. And this guy walks into college football, and somehow Day upgraded from Jim Knowles. He upgraded, which is bizarre. It's just bizarre to think about. Some people said it almost in jest at the time he made the hire. But my goodness, man, to think of all the people that were against this over the nonsensical reason that he was not a great head coach in Detroit, I think more of it had to do with the personality, and they thought the players didn't like him in Detroit, and we'd heard some things like that, in fairness. But to think that Ryan Day, the guy who values culture over everything else, would hire some raging jerk to come in and coach his players, just utterly ridiculous to me. Like, give the guy a little credit. He just won a national championship off of a culture-first program, enough culture-first that he got the entire senior class to come back. That I had no worry about at all. All right, number 64, Ryan Day, Brian Hartline, Tyler Bowen, and Keenan Bailey, the offensive brain trust that is putting together the game plans. And these guys, so far, at this point in the season, halfway through, I think it's been a clunky start. We'll call it that. It's been a clunky start for the offensive crew. I don't put it all on Hartline. We don't know how. Look, Hartline isn't as good with the run game as his run game coordinator, Tyler Bowen. So instead of like last year where Justin Fry was the run game coordinator, I would imagine Tyler Bowen has a lot more to do with the run game. They haven't found their sweet spot yet. I believe they will find a sweeter spot, but I think they're limited in that role, and we'll get to that in a little bit. But the biggest, most puzzling issue to me is the insistence on the 12 and 13 personnel. The insistence on the tight end stuff, which when we first saw it, it was like, all right, this is cool. This is something different. And let's see how it works. Use it here, use it there. It just seems like way too much. And it feels like that's obvious, but we're not seeing it really decrease much. You're not getting any advantage out of the passing game running this. You just saw in the last 2 games, Max Clare come on a little bit, 6 receptions, and then 4 receptions in the last 2 games for Max Clare. And that's great, but you're pulling a wide receiver off the field every time you bring in another one of those tight ends. And I would love to see Brandon Ennis get more involved, a little more dynamic in the passing game. And it just feels like there's a little bit of stubbornness with these tight ends. In the running game, you would expect this is where it's really going to help you. It's not at all. It's not at all. It is bringing more guys to the play instead of spreading them out. Now, instead of counting on, when you bring all these tight ends in, instead of counting on your offensive linemen and one tight end to hold their blocks, right, to do their jobs, you're now adding in numbers. And now these guys are 2 more guys, 1 more or 2 more guys that have to execute their block. And if they don't, their guy's going to make a tackle. Their guy's going to blow up a play. And it just feels like, man, why haven't we seen this adjust? I don't know. But the operation has felt a little clunky. And there's, whatever. I mean, you expect it to be clunky. There's no doubt about that. But I will be happy when they decide to lessen that to about, 33% of the snaps instead of 50% or 45, wherever they're at, that we are going to only use 33% of the snaps with multiple tight ends in the game. Number 72, special teams issues are never ending. I don't think they'll ever be solved under Ryan Day. Currently, it's the punter. It's the punter. Joey McGuire's just had a rough year, man. He's had a rough year. 3 punts in about the 35-yard range in the game against Illinois. You had a couple of penalties on special teams, taking delay of games because they weren't sure what to do with Illinois' rush to come get the punt. And that's okay, but it's just another thing to add on to there. And it just feels at this point like this guy is so good at everything. He's so great at everything. You can't be perfect. And if you're not going to be perfect at something, I would appreciate that it is special teams and not something else. But it almost feels like a block. I don't get it. When we watch the Oregon-Indiana game and you watch the Indiana kicker hit not one, but 2 57-yard field goals to walk off into the locker room at halftime, and you think that Ryan Day has had 2 50-plus yard made field goals in his entire, now in year 7, career at Ohio State. You watch Georgia Tech beat Clemson with the 50-yarder. And the most puzzling part, when you think about the fact that Ryan Day literally lost a national championship game on a missed field goal, I would think that he would say at that point, I am Ohio State. I'll do whatever I have to do to make sure I never go through this again, that I never fight and drag out a brawl like this for it to come down to a kicker, to have him miss like that again in a spot like that. So I'm going to make sure I got a great kicker. And there isn't a great kicker. And I don't know, man. It just seems like a mental block. But it is true that specials issues are never ending with Ryan Day. Arvell and Sonny, JJ and Carnell, I don't know if we will ever see. This is not a fact, is it? I don't know. It's just a title. I just want to riff on some Buckeyes, if you don't mind. I don't know if we'll ever see a combo at wide receiver quite that good and at linebacker quite that good. It's certain that we've never seen it before in my life. I do believe that. Number 84, the running game is not good enough. It's not good enough, man. And it comes at a year where the offensive line is good enough. The offensive line, I love this offensive line. Unfortunately, this is a bit of a personnel issue to me, and it's a bit of a play calling issue to me. The run schemes haven't been great. What you would probably want to do in an ideal, perfect world is have different packages for CJ and James to take advantage of their skill sets and keep them out of what they don't do well. But Bo Jackson is obviously the number one back on this team. And I think that the gap between Bo and CJ and James Peoples is just too big. It's too big of a gap. You need something to close that gap. James Peoples and CJ Donaldson will get you exactly what's blocked up for them, and that's it. They're not going to get you anything else. Their yards after contact, both of them, if you ranked them in the country, they're like 378 and like 408, which obviously that's not Ohio State good. That's not even Ohio State acceptable. When we look at Bo, he's in the top 35 in the country in that statistic with 400 yards, 7 yards a carry, 5.5 and some change yards after contact. The other two are like 2 and some change. They've just not, they've had half a season now. And what we've seen out of both of them hasn't been great. But at the same time, you don't want to put all this wear and tear on Bo, who did have a couple of injuries in high school, who just got dinged up, a little ankle injury. You want Bo for the playoffs. You need Bo for the playoffs. Now, I've thought since spring that just talent-wise, when we talk about all-around running back, Bo Jackson, Isaiah West are your number 1 and number 2. And I still believe that. In fact, I believe that even more so after seeing half a season of James Peoples and CJ Donaldson. I would sure love to see Isaiah West. But the fact of the matter is, whatever they do, they're going to have to try something a little better, because when we look at this running game against Illinois, remember a team that gave up 300 and some rushing yards to Illinois. This is what they did against Illinois, the Buckeyes, that is. They they rushed for 2.9 yards a carry, 106 total yards. They had 16 runs of negative 0, 1, or 2 yards. 16 of them, 37 total rushes, and 16 of them were negative 1 or 0, 1, or 2 yards, which obviously that's a huge fail. So that's nearly half of your rushes were a huge fail. 9 of them were 3-yard runs. 9 of them were 4+ yard runs, which is good. And 3 of them were explosive runs, 10+. But the number here is the ratio where you have got 9 total that were 4+ or explosive. That 3 is included in that 9. 9 total super successful runs. And that they could be 4, or not super successful. We'll call them successful. 9 successful. 3 is acceptable. But when you pair that 3 with the 16 negative 0, 1, or 2, that's disgusting, man. That's gross. That's gross football. And the Buckeyes are better than that. And there's no way around it. The running game has not been up to snuff. So whatever it is they got to do, and I don't think it's an offensive line issue, the horrible thing is, I think that if you didn't have Bo Jackson to burst onto the scene, that if we were just watching Peoples and Donaldson, most people would blame this on the offensive line. That's generally just kind of the reflex here. Not an offensive line issue. And finally, number 94, heard a lot about this. The pass rush out of the base defense, out of a 4-man set, has not been good enough. I think everything is just fine with the pass rush on the defense. I think that when they want heat, they're getting heat. And I think that the base defense is doing exactly what they're told to do here. Let's keep in mind, again, they played Altmaier, who is another quarterback who can move. And they've played 5 quarterbacks this year, everybody outside of Minnesota, who can move. They didn't need to put a spy on Altmaier, but they did cage those edges. If they couldn't get in immediately, they had him cage. They had to make sure that they were keeping contained. And we're just not going to see a lot of sacks out of base when they're playing a running quarterback like that. In addition, guys are getting the ball out fast against them because they are so scared that a blitz, they're disguising them so great, could come from anywhere at any time. So that has been something a lot of people are talking about. I don't find it to be a problem at all. But like I said, halfway through the season, these Buckeyes, absolutely tremendous. The far and away number 1 team in the country. And that fact is amazing. It's amazing, as Ryan Day is now the number 1 coach in all of college football. Ryan Day and his team, the far and away number 1 and favorite to win the national championship. And this season has been so much fun. There's always so much anticipation for me when we go into a season where there's a lot of personnel turnover and you get to see all these guys that we've been familiar with, and now it's their turn, next man up. We've never seen it be quite so successful, be quite so like amazing. The amount of things that had to go right to get to where we're at right now is just so many things had to go right. And through the first half of the season, almost everything has gone right. Almost everything is coming up aces for the Buckeyes. It almost feels too good to be true. But the best part of it, in terms of the national championship pursuit, is when we take a gander around the country. When we take a gander around the country, guys, the competition, and really this is just an observation on all of college football, including Ohio State, like the best of the best teams are just not as good as they used to be. This is what a lot of people thought would happen with the transfer portal. At some point, we would start to see the better teams losing their depth. It feels like more than that, though. It feels like more than depth. When we look at the starting lineups, when we look at the teams, every team has holes, multiple holes. The Bucks, we'd like to see that running game improve. That's about it. There's no other holes. And in fact, most of the areas are that, oh, that's top 5 in the country. That's top 5 in the country. That's the best in the country. It is incredible. And there's really nobody like them. And people will say Miami, people will say Indiana, both play really good team football. I think that Ohio State would be, well, I know for my buddy T. Shoe from the T. Shoe Index said that Ohio State would be a 3-point favorite. This was last week, though, on their closest competitor. So a 3-point favorite on neutral field against Miami. That was last week. I imagine that's even better now. Certainly they would be a 3+ against Indiana. Texas A&M was number 5 at the time, and Ohio State was a 13.5-point favorite in a hypothetical matchup against Texas A&M, the SEC's best school. So keep that in mind. Ohio State, a 13.5-point favorite against the very best that the SEC has to offer right now. Now, I suspect that would be a tighter line against Alabama, but going by the rankings, Bama, matter of fact, why don't we look at those rankings? There's some things that really bother me, and I don't know if you guys have watched me before as we are here on Buckeye Huddle, and please, if you could, like the channel, subscribe to the channel, like the show. It is awesome, man. We give you everything here. Great place, great people to work for. It is the, one of the only independent Ohio State websites that is full-fledged covering the Buckeyes, which is cool, which is why I wanted to work for them. But when we pull up the top 25, we've got the Buckeyes as the clear number 1. Indiana did end up getting a couple of votes. Now, it's interesting here this year. A lot of people are talking about, well, Indiana should have been number 1, and they're spitting out their resume. And I've heard a lot of resumes than we've ever heard before. Hey, here's the deal. I'm all for doing the top 25 based on resume and solely resume if that's what they want to do. But it's never been like that my entire life. I don't know why that's all of a sudden like people are acting like indignant about it. It's never been about resume. Resume is a factor. Every single voter factors in the resume, and then they also factor in the eye test and what they think. It's always been like that. But this year, it's almost like people just are seeing this poll and figuring out how it works the first time. It's never been just like, okay, this resume is better. That's number 1. This resume is better than number 3, but not as good as number 1. Well, that's number 2. That is never how the AP poll has worked. And I'm seeing that more and more. Yes, Indiana has the best win of the season going out to Oregon. I wouldn't even have a problem if someone said, I think that's a better team than Ohio State. I think they'd be wrong, but I wouldn't have a problem with it. Nonetheless, Ohio State gets about 60, close to 60 AP number 1 votes. Indiana gets a couple. Miami gets a couple. Buckeyes way out in front in public perception, and they are number 1. Number 2, Miami. Number 3, Indiana. Number 4, Texas A&M. Number 5, Ole Miss. The 2 best that the SEC has to offer. When I look at Ohio State and Indiana versus the 2 at the top of the SEC, I think that Ohio State and Indiana are vastly superior to Texas A&M and Ole Miss. I think at number 6, Alabama, now you're talking about a team that could play with Ohio State and Indiana in a much better capacity than Texas A&M and Ole Miss. At number 7, we got our oil money Texas Tech. And it is going to be so interesting to see what these guys do in the playoff. In year 1, under Cody Campbell, the Fighting Cody Campbells, that is the billionaire former Texas Tech football player, offensive lineman under Mike Leach that is now funding the entire operation. And it's an interesting story. It is really interesting. Could these guys do what Indiana did and be a power just like that? We just might see it, man. Oregon drops to number 8 after the loss to Indiana. A loss to Indiana where they looked really, really rough, man. I mean, Indiana was just flat out the better team. Now, the Buckeyes, of course, lost out there at Autzen last year. That team was better than this Oregon version. No doubt about that. Georgia, number 9. LSU, number 10. Texas sneaks back into the top 25 down there at number 21 after beating Oklahoma, number 14 now. And they really took care of them pretty well. So shout out to Texas, and they've got a couple of tough games left still on their schedule. They got to go to Georgia. They got to play Texas A&M. They got one more tough test, which I can't think of off the top of my head. But there is potential there for them to make it to the national championship. Now, here's where I got an issue. Somebody tweeted today, one of these SEC accounts, they tweeted Ohio State and Indiana's schedules. So they tweet Ohio State and Indiana's schedules, and along with that, Texas A&M and Ole Miss's schedule. And he's going by the remaining opponents and saying it's just ridiculous how much more difficult Texas A&M and Ole Miss's schedule are remaining than Ohio State and Indiana. And I think it's ridiculous that when we look at 5-1 teams in the Big Ten, like USC at number 20, Nebraska at number 25, Washington, who is unranked, those are 5-1 Big Ten teams. Why is it that they aren't given the same respect as the 5-1 SEC teams, like Alabama, like Georgia, like LSU, like Tennessee, who almost lost yesterday to Arkansas? Heck, Ole Miss almost lost yesterday to Washington State, who got by Washington, who Ohio State totally shut down. I just feel like they're being a little slow to catch up on what's going on here. And what's going on here is that tier of the Big Ten has gotten a lot better. And I think that's what we saw in bowl season last year. And I think that's what we're going to continue to see in bowl season and in the playoffs this year. There is no way you can convince me that USC isn't as good as Tennessee. You just can't. And I think that most people would probably agree with that. I don't understand why the reflexive, it really is. It's just reflexive that we're going to put USC. Oh, that's nice. They must be back into the top 25. But Tennessee, they deserve to be almost in the top 10. And as someone who's not a Big Ten homer, I'm not that. I just look for the fair treatment. And this is not fair treatment. It's also not recognizing what's going on in the sport. And it really irritates me, to be honest. So anyway, let's try to get that fixed, guys. Let's keep giving them hell. I'm giving them hell. I promise you, I am. Like I said, I'm not a Big Ten homer, but I'm giving them hell about this. This is not fair. It's not right. Anyway, please do like the show. Please do subscribe here to Buckeye Huddle. We appreciate you guys so much. And I will talk to you Wednesday. I'm out of here from Buckeye Studios, Southeast in Orlando, Florida. We'll be back home. Don't worry. We'll be back home on Friday night because my lovely wife, normally we travel Saturday to Saturday, and I begged her to please not make me go. I don't want to go. I don't want to miss 2 Saturdays of college football. And she changed the trip from Monday to Friday, shortened her trip that she loves so much so that I didn't have to miss my 2 Saturdays and could be included with the family. How amazing is that, right? The only issue, the internet, which is why I'm not live today. And why I won't be live Wednesday either, and why this video that I'm doing right here will take roughly 2 hours and 45 to 3 hours and 45 minutes just to upload onto YouTube, which is just amazing. So I got to hurry up and get out of here and upload it so it's in time before my boss, Tony, yells at me. So appreciate you guys. Talk to you soon. Juck on Bucks from Buckeye Huddle Primetime out.